everybody. Welcome along to this edition of The Final Whistle on learmedia.tv. And our usual email is info@learmedia.tv. And our subscribe button is on the bottom right-hand side, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell all your friends about us. We may be joining everyone with Jimmy, who's having a technical problem, but for the time being, welcome along, Martin Waters, to this edition.
Hi, Pat. How you doing?
Very well. I hope you're looking well anyway. Welcome, Derwynne Honan. Again,
how you doing, Pat?
I love your Welsh. Is that the Welsh flag behind you, is it?
No, it's definitely an English flag.
I know what it. I know what it is.
I don't know. There's a match going on this week.
There was one over the weekend. I was busy myself, but I heard there was one over the weekend. You know. Obviously, we're going to start off with Euro 2000. Played in 2021. I get mixed up all the time when you try to Google something. It's Euro 2020 comes up because that's when it was supposed to happen. And when you look for anyway, look, we had the last 16 matches over the weekend, the quarterfinals, I suppose. It's down to the last 4 now. And Martin, did you see the English match over the weekend or any of it?
Yeah, I watched most of it. I was flicking over and back really. Because it looked very one-sided. Once they got the early goal, they were in total control. The way that their team is set up, they play kind of 2 defensive midfielders in front of a kind of almost like 2 centre backs, 3 centre backs essentially, 2 wing backs. So once they go goal up, it's hard to break them down. And when a team comes out then attempting to get one back, they're exposed, to the pace of Sterling, to the finishing of Kane, and so on. So, once they get a goal up, they've proven so far to be a very formidable outfit. They haven't conceded a goal yet.
And Derwynne, no doubt we were talking about it in the last program. We all agreed that they would get a pass to Ukraine anyway, but they still had to play the match, and they still had to beat them. But were you impressed? Notwithstanding the opposition, were you impressed how organised England are?
Yeah, I think they're starting to sort of gel a bit. I think they're kind of heading in the right direction. They've just got to keep it going for a couple more games, really. But I think the Denmark game is going to be the toughest one they're going to face.
And why would you say that now? Because Denmark have impressed me myself. I didn't think they'd get this far myself. But they've really.
I think you've got sort of it's not many teams where you're actually going to say that probably the biggest name player is the goalkeeper. And if you think of the team, they're all sort of like journeyman pros, and I know you've got Premier League players and all the rest of it, but none of them are superstars, are they? So I don't think there's egos running in that team. I think the emotional thing with Christian Eriksen, I'm not sure that can take you all the distance, but I think it probably is a bit of a motivator for them. But I think this will be an interesting game, this one. I think it will go to penalties.
And Martin, what do you think yourself? Do you think Denmark are capable of beating England on Wednesday night?
I think they are, especially if they score first. I think that's the crucial part of this game, is who scores first. If England scores first, it's going to be very hard to see, firstly, are Denmark capable of scoring then or equalising? And secondly, are they capable of pushing on and getting a second? It's, if you look at their record in the tournament, like they started off with 2 defeats, and it was their 3rd game that they kind of started to turn things around. I think that was against the Swiss, if I remember. I'm trying to remember, actually, was it the Swiss? Might have been someone else. But they turned things around with their 3rd game in the group. Actually, that was against Russia. I think, so they turned things around then, and they started to play well ever since. But England would probably now be their toughest test as well. So they'll be tested in all aspects of defence. Have their defence come up. Like their last game was against the Czech Republic, who England beat kind of comfortably in the group phase. They were never troubled against the Czech Republic. So you would have to think, although like Denmark have a lot of momentum, England would definitely be favourites.
And Derwynne, first of all, I must pay tribute to all his relations up in County Mayo, that is Harry Kane. Well done to Harry Kane. And also, I think that Harry Kane, that Mourinho did not suit as manager of Spurs. And I think Harry Kane lost a lot of his confidence as a player, that's my opinion, under Mourinho. And I think it has taken him till now, till this game, that's only my looking in now, to get back to what he feels himself, what he's good at, you know? It's scoring
Mourinho with his with Mourinho's track record. He does have a trail of players he just doesn't like. Luke Shaw at United. Mourinho goes, Luke Shaw has one of the best seasons he's ever had. Yeah. Kane could be a similar situation. But that looks like Harry Maguire there.
Good evening, James, and welcome along to this edition.
Just call me Guy, please. Just call me Guy.
What we're talking about, Jimmy, is the Euros over the weekend, and obviously we're down to the last four, and obviously we've just discussed England and the UK, but did you see the Italian match at all by any chance? And
I did, yeah, I did. I've seen them all. I've been. I don't think there's any match that I haven't seen, or at least saw the highlights of it. Yeah, I've seen them all. I funny enough, and it'll just bring forward my plans for the 5th of November if it happens. But I can see them beating Denmark. I really can. I think Denmark's emotion, the emotions will fail them after a while, and but I can't see them beating either Spain or Italy. In fact, I'd put money on Italy right now. I did at the start, if you remember.
Yeah,
I did. Italy from the start. So, but anyway, for the sake of England and the House of Parliament, let's hope I'm not tempted to bring forward my plans.
But also the idea that I think Italy did play Belgium off the pitch soccer-wise.
They did, yeah. The best team in the world with so-called all the best players. But I think in my opinion, it was blindingly obvious that that De Bruyne just wasn't up for it, up to it. He gave it a shot, but after 65 minutes, he was just walking around the field. He couldn't do any more. And I think that he's so good, he's so special, as is Hazard. When you take both of those out of the game, you nullify Lukaku, because if people aren't feeding him quality ball, as we've seen before, when he played with the wankers from up north, he couldn't buy a goal. They couldn't buy a goal for him. But when he doesn't have somebody feeding him the type of ball he wants. So,
we're going to take a piece of audio, lads, of England that we showed 4 goals. But in those clips there, lads, you can comment away. I thought Luke Shaw had a superb match myself.
Yeah, he's. I thought he finished the season, this season in particular, really strongly. He's probably been one of Manchester United's best players of the season. So, considering where he's come from, he had a terrible time under Mourinho. So, he was basically left on the bench and discarded. So I think United went out to sign a left back, Tellez, and I think that bit of competition for places within any team can give a player the spur to actually improve and work harder and stuff like that. And I think that's actually been something that's actually helped him, because he has started to actually improve. And now he's like, if you looked before the tournament, they would have said that the fullbacks would have been probably James from Chelsea and possibly Trent Alexander. I know he got injured, but nobody was mentioning Luke Shaw, and now all of a sudden he is the first choice left full.
I mean, Chilwell was a bigger.
Yeah. What do you think, Derwynne? I think he's been outstanding.
I think he's had probably the best season, if not. I'm not sure who was voted United's player of the season, but I think it could have been Shaw. I think it was either Shaw or Fernandez, but I think Shaw deserves it if it was a toss up between the two.
Yeah.
Well, I thought Luke Shaw anyway myself, and let's not get too carried away. But we have the match on Wednesday. We have one tomorrow night now, lads, for us to savour first. Is Italy and Spain. There's no doubt about it that Spain will give it all because Spain have a huge, proud tradition of soccer as well as Italy. But to me, as I said in the very first sports show, I fancied Italy to win the whole thing. My €5, that's all I want. Like, but I don't know. I mean, they are. It's a stupid thing to say it, but everybody knows what we mean. They play as a team. Mancini has them. They have a fantastic midfield, and they have people. They have 3 or 4 or 5 players in that team that can score. You know, at any one time. Derwynne, how do you see that one going tomorrow night, the Italy-Spain match?
I can't imagine Spain playing as bad again as they did the last time round, but I think Italy will nick it 2-1 or something.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Martin? Do you think they're favourites, and rightly so?
Italy are probably favourites, but I would we all know at this stage how Italy have been playing, so I'm sure Spain know only well how they're playing. You know, they'll approach this game in a way to prevent Italy from playing the type of football they want to play. So I think a lot of it will depend on how Spain set up. And Spain may set up in such a way that it might negate Italy's game plan as such. So it could be very tactical. It may not be the free-flowing game we think that we got between, like Belgium said, probably we'll take Italy on, and we've the better players, we'll beat them. I don't think Spain will take the same approach. They may be more, defensive minded. So
yeah, it'll be fascinating. We'll come back to the soccer. You're listening to the final whistle with Derwynne, Martin, and myself, and our other regular panelist has some technical issues. He may join us later on in the show, Jimmy, but that's no problem, James. We'll be waiting in the long grass again towards the end of the show for you anyway. And stag, but info@learmedia.tv is our email, and tell all your friends about us and subscribe to our channel anytime. And all these shows are up on our webpage and up on our YouTube channel as well. You get them by. Now we're going to switch tack for a minute, Martin, since you're on the show with us. The Tour de France, as I said, I only had a passing interest, but I did force myself, and I'm delighted because I saw some of the stages T.G. Cahir covers here in Ireland. T.G. Cahir gives some fantastic coverage to the racing, the Tour de France. The camera work and the shots of the French countryside is just phenomenal, apart from the racing itself.
Yeah.
I don't understand the racing. I don't understand the tactics of it. How a person could be 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 minutes down and they're 30 seconds ahead. I understand there's 4 or 5 in a team, and obviously they all work for each other, some kind of thing. But not to labor the point. I just going back to the race stage 7, Martin. I just wanted to ask you about that because that's the one I was looking at from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Stage 7 on Friday when what's his name? Mark Cavendish, first of all, won the stage, and I didn't realise he was so close to the brilliant Eddie Merckx in the most stage wins in the Tour de France. You know, what do you think? I mean, I was surprised. Were you surprised?
Well, he's been on the scene for a long time now. He's currently has 32 stage wins in the Tour de France. The last couple of years he's been blighted with injury. So his career was coming to probably closure, and it's probably in the last 2 years where there's been a resurgence in form. He actually wasn't meant to go to the Tour at all. He was Sam Bennett, the Irish cyclist, who was supposed to be going to the Tour, but Sam Bennett got injured in the build-up to the Tour, and Mark Cavendish has taken his place on the team. So it was kind of like, like everything, you need a bit of luck in these things. So he got his place on the team, and next thing he wins the stage, and his confidence and everything else comes back, and Then he wins another stage. So now he's 32 stage wins. He's leading in the points category, which is basically the category for the green jersey. Like there's really 4 competitions in the Tour de France. There's the overall winner, which is the yellow jersey. There's the green jersey, which is for the points winner. These are usually, it's set up for sprinters and things like that. You have the mountains jersey, which is called the polka dot. Again, guys that are good up in the mountains, they're competing for that shirt. And then you have the white jersey, which is for the young riders. So the the best young cyclist. I think that's under 23 or something like that. So he's competing really for the green jersey and to either equal or exceed Merckx's record of 34 stage wins in the Tour de France. And he's not far off it with 2 weeks racing left to go. He has an opportunity to do it. Yeah.
I reckon he could at least equal, if not pass him out. But getting mercifully about it, it's only €17,500 for the winner of the green jersey.
Yeah, like the prize money in cycling is quite poor.
Note that today, and for a 3 weeks grueling race that has hundreds and hundreds of sponsors.
Yeah.
17,500. I think most people won that go down at the golf this weekend in Kilkenny.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's the level of sponsorship you would have to look into there, and the volume, like how much different sports have different global audiences. Cycling wouldn't have the global audience that it was going that way in I suppose the Lance Armstrong era. It was becoming a global sport, but the setbacks from that, the controversy around doping and things like that has had, they will actually have an impact on things like Armstrong lost all his sponsors, so that had an impact on the sport. So although there is a resurgence there and more sponsors are coming back into the sport, it wouldn't be to the level of sports like golf, like football. Just would be nowhere near it. Yeah,
they lost a lot of network coverage in America and in Australia, where cycling is considered.
When you consider how big cycling is in Europe, like when you think of Belgium, Holland, and Central Europe, like for years, Germany just refused to actually televise cycling after what happened with a kind of a German team and a doping scandal around those. So it's had like its issues, but looking at the Tour this year, it's refreshing to see guys going up the mountains and you can see they're suffering, and that's usually a sign that things are kind of okay.
Yeah, that's not. I know you're not in.
I'm suffering just watching.
I don't want to go back there, but when people are reaching some of the times now, I know Derwynne is laughing as well, and they're getting off the bike and posing for pictures.
Yeah.
To myself, there's an awful lot of asthmatics in cycling. But Derwynne, did you see any of the tour? Of the cycling?
Yeah, but I didn't see much on Saturday, but I did watch a bit during the course of last week. But I think it's unbelievable how they're just athletes, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yeah, I think the last time I was on the show, Pat, I mentioned 2 in particular who I thought would go close, and one of them is Pogačar, who's leading now, and he's leading by 2 minutes, which is a significant lead after 1 week. His next rival is Ben O'Connor, who's actually Australian, and he wouldn't be somebody that they would have picked out as being a rival. So his next rival was like 5 minutes behind. So he's got a healthy advantage after 1 week of racing, and with 2 weeks to go, he's people would say he's odds-on favourite now to win it. But nearest rival was Roglic, who had a very bad crash in the first few days, and he's actually pulled out of the race. So he really now I think for him now it's about negotiating each stage day by day, getting through it. Keeping on tabs with his nearest rivals, and probably playing it kind of it's almost like a defensive approach. Sitting on their wheel, not letting them get away, and playing a defensive role would support it for him,
the chef de keeper, they call him, the fellow in charge of the team.
Yeah.
Of Sam Bennett's team.
Yes.
Did he accuse Sam Bennett of pretending to be injured?
I'm not sure. I think there is a bit of conflict there, and I think it's because it's over contracts and terms and conditions with signing a new contract and not signing a new contract.
Right.
Like cyclists will haggle for the best deal for themselves, especially at when you get to a certain age. You know that the next deal is your career defining deal.
Yes.
And like I think Sam Bennett was offered a deal similar to the deal he's currently on. So you would think he was probably negotiating for a better deal. So when, it's like any sport, when a manager and a player, when there's a bit of conflict between them, things will be said, one side against the other. So I would suggest that probably Sam Bennett won't be cycling with that team next year and is probably working on trying to negotiate a contract with another team. But we'll wait and see, will he ride for that team at the next Grand Tour, which is the Tour.
Yeah, he'd be the Roy Keane of that team, and the manager of that team would be Ferguson. Do you remember that, Derwynne, when the Roy Keane finished his career with Man United? It was unfortunate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it a bit disrespectful to Roy Keane? Now, I'm not saying that because he was Irish and I'm Irish. In fact, he's from the same county. I thought it was a bit too much, that Ferguson had too much power towards the end.
Yeah, I think United just became dependent on Ferguson, didn't they?
He left first. Do you know when Ferguson left? Then he left nothing behind him.
Yeah, I think Ferguson feathered his nest there too, didn't he? He had his son Darren play for United. He was useless. His other son is a agent. I think there's. I don't, feathering. I suppose I shouldn't be saying that in the public domain, but allegedly, feathering his nest. I mean, it just seems to me as though, Ferguson was amazing manager and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But, I think that just got to a level there that, he regrets about what happened with Jaap Stam. And if you think of an owner of a football club, you'd probably be standing there saying, why are we letting someone like Jaap Stam go? But he kind of had free reign, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he did. He was given complete autonomy by the club, really, And sometimes you're right. Sometimes that can be a good thing, because managers just leave if they're too restrained, if there's too many. But there has to be some kind of a balance. I mean, look, I'm not a fan of interfering with a manager. Well, have Formula One found a new champion now in Max Verstappen? What do you think, Derwynne? Do you see any of the Formula One over the weekend?
I didn't see it yesterday. I think it's quite interesting when you listen to some of the reports coming out with Lewis Hamilton, and he's moaning about his car, and you listen to people with Formula One, and you kind of just go, yeah, it's technology driven, it's science, it's everything else, tactics, what have you. I don't think those cars, once you've got a car that's faster than the other car, I think it's quite hard for that car to lose, isn't it?
To me,
what I mean, I think is the driver's skill levels aren't really what the difference, are they? It's just the car.
Do you know? I know about you, Martin. It's gone very antiseptic for me as a sport. You can't pass there, and there isn't enough. I think. What do you think, Martin, of Formula One?
I would have followed it in the past, because I always felt that it was the playing field was level, where it wasn't just about the car, there was more about the actual drivers. So
yeah,
I'm going back a few years now, but like I kind of lost interest in it when a lot of the commentary on it was more about the car than the driver. And for me, then, like that kind of took away for me what the sport is about. I think the level play, the playing field should be level. Like, I don't think, like, if you take cycling, for example, like the bikes are the bikes. They all have the same amount of gears. They're all generally the same weight. There is no technological advancement in the bike that others wouldn't have. So, like, and if there is, it's absolutely minimal. But with the driving, you often feel that it's almost like a race to be more technology advanced than the opposition, and then the driver is just to supplement that. So I haven't really tuned into it in the last couple of years.
I know the first real guy that turned me on to Formula One was James Hunt. You're probably too young to remember James Hunt. And Nicky Lauda, the battles they had, and then you had Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost from France. As you said, Martin, it's the commentary now is all about the cars, the wing, the speed. I know what to be talking about half the time, really. As you said, there's very little down to the skill of the driver. In some circuits, of course, and some they are, but really. Now, Derwynne, before we're going on to the golf at the moment, just have a quick. Did you get to see the Irish Open, Derwynne? Much of it?
I watched a little bit yesterday. Some of the highlights as well last night.
Yeah. What do you think overall?
I just think the standard of golf now is so good. It is unbelievable. I mean, to win the Irish Open at 19 under.
Yeah.
That's going some. All right. It's it's not a links course, is it? It's not it's a different style of golf course to what you'd normally expect for a course in Ireland.
Do you think the course? I'm sorry for cutting you off. Do you think the course should have been used at all for an Irish Open with the caliber of the field? Like, I don't think so.
I think if you've got the caliber of courses that you've got in Ireland, there's better golf courses to be played at. Now, how much money Mount Juliet threw into the pot, who knows? But money talks and all the rest of it, and there would have been an element of that. But I think in the lead up to the Open, if you think like where they're playing in Scotland this week at Renaissance, very linksy. Again, to me, the Irish Open should be a links course, really. You got Portrush, you've got hundreds, haven't you? There's so many good golf courses. And I'm not saying Mount Juliet's not a good golf course, but it's not what I would have thought in the build up into coming into that Open. You'd expected quite a lot of Americans to come over, start getting ready to play. Maybe it's COVID. I don't know. I mean, I think we kind of point towards COVID when things are wrong. Or
He wouldn't be traveling because of COVID to the Irish Open, I know that.
Can you hear me now?
Now,
hell yeah!
Ricky Fowler is playing Scotland. Now, the other thing is, of course, the winner, not alone did they get the money, they got, it's $500,000 or something they got for winning it, €500,000. They got 28 world ranking points. And of course, they got a 2-year exemption on the European Tour.
Yeah.
The winner. So that's a pretty hefty deal, like for a professional golfer, there when they can.
It is, yeah.
It's guaranteed income if you play up to any kind of standards, on a regular basis. So it's still a good competition. Now there's calls this morning from I don't know Rory McIlroy, but a lot of the golfers are saying it's time to change the date of the Irish Open. Change it. Martin, did you get to see any of it?
I just saw bits of it on Saturday and Sunday. I was actually, obviously I was trying to follow the Irish golfers, but the Irish golfers didn't really play too well on Saturday. I think Lowry was the only one really that threw a good round together, and that was yesterday. Where I think he shot, did he shoot 6 under or something like that? So he shot an excellent round yesterday. So I, looking through it, it was Richard Bland, I think. He's won a tournament this year for the first time in a long time. And he actually played really well in the US as well recently, where he was actually leading at one point. I think he was leading after 2 rounds. Was it in the US Open or US PGA?
The PGA, yeah.
Yeah, he was leading after 2 rounds. So he actually, he came into the reckoning yesterday kind of as well. He kind of finished very strongly. I think he shot 5 under, I think. So I did tune in, but again, it was disappointing that the Irish golfers weren't more prominent, in the leaderboard. I think that we're going back to Lowry's win, and we're going back to Harrington's win for the last time an Irish golfer won the Irish Open.
Harrington won it down in a day, did he?
That's correct. Yeah.
Harrington won in a day, but Rory McIlroy finished 17 strokes behind the winner, lads. Is Rory McIlroy busted flushed? I know he'd be a favourite to win the Open in Scotland, but
if McIlroy's going through so many swing changes, I think he's going through. He's trying too hard.
Yeah.
I think if he could McIlroy's so good. He only needs a couple of decent rounds for it to click, but he wants it to click on a Saturday and Sunday, not Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
And if he gets it to click, he'll be off and running again. He's too good not to.
67 on Friday, was it?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I said, that's it now. 2 more rounds in the 60s and he's the winner.
No, he finished 73, 74. I mean, that's going backwards on the weekend. That's not good.
Can you hear me now? Any Joy?
Yeah.
Hello, James. Good evening, James. Welcome.
Welcome back. I finally, you can tell Mary and Derwynne and all of our Westminster lovers. I think the reason why my systems went down is that the spy people in the GCHQ in the UK honed in on my avatar of Guy Fawkes and promptly cut me off. So they obviously are so old-fashioned. They haven't realised that I have a phone, and that probably explains that. I think just to say something to Derwynne there, that and I was involved many years ago in trying to get Le Hinch for the Irish Open before Le Hinch got it. Yeah. And the biggest problem that was outlined at the time was infrastructure for Le Hinch. And if you look at probably the best courses in Ireland, very few of the links courses, with the possible exception of the Old Head of Kinsale, would have the infrastructure to host it. And when I say infrastructure, I mean hotels, ease of access, and much more importantly, somebody like JP McManus with pots of money to throw at it. So that's why Adair gets used. That's why the K Club, because of Smurfit's money, that's why that gets used. And I don't know whether you've ever played it, Derwynne, but in my opinion, the nicest golf course in Ireland is in Kerry. Sorry, no, God, no, Jesus, no. Out on the Dingle Peninsula. Can't remember the name of it now. What's his face? Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin has had a place. Waterville. That's it. Thank you. Waterville. Gorgeous place to play, but it just hasn't got the infrastructure. You'd have to get people staying in Killarney, and if you've ever driven the Ring of Kerry, you know that it's not easy to get from Killarney to Waterville, and that's what kills it. Plus, rich men want it played in their pet courses. And anybody I know, I don't know whether you've ever played Mount Juliet, it's generally accepted as being the best parkland course in the country. So it was always going to get it at some stage. And I think ripping it asunder, he was the only one who ripped it asunder. The Irish guys didn't rip it asunder. I think it was just a case that Herbert managed to put 4 rounds above his average capability together, and that was it, you know. Following on from what you said about McIlroy, I think McIlroy's problem is exactly what Derwynne says.
He goes out, he gets a couple of decent rounds together, and he goes, now, right, I have it fixed. I'm going to beat this course. I'm going to take it to the cleaners. He has a bad drive on the first, chips into the water on the second, and his head then takes him out of the next 2 rounds. And that's McIlroy's problem. If I was his manager, do you know what I'd advise? A couple of stiff whiskies before he goes out into every round to stop him fucking thinking clearly. It's about the only thing that's going to do anything for him. Because when he starts focusing on doing everything he's learned in the last 6 weeks, he's knackered. It's his head. It's not his physical ability.
He's thinking of what to do rather than just doing it.
Just do absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the problem with it. And
Yeah.
from golf pro. Sorry,
Derwynne. Would you put any money on McIlroy to win the British Open?
Like he's capable. Like there's no doubt about it. I was reading yesterday that he's going to play in Scotland and then play the Open. And whilst in Scotland, I think this week he's actually meeting up with Pete Cowan, his coach. So they're going to work on things leading into the Scottish Open. I would like to go back to when McIlroy changed his caddy. I think that has been a significant kind of like career-defining kind of change. And it hasn't worked out as well as I think he thought it would. I think his previous caddy had experience. He won his majors with that caddy, and I was baffled when he changed. I couldn't understand it when some of the best pros on the tour, they have caddies that they keep, and they've caddies for a long time. Even if you look at Oosthuizen, who competed really well in the I think the US Open against Ram, that the caddy he had was Colin Byrne, who caddied for Retief Goosen and things like that. A real solid caddy that has a reputation of delivering for his player. Yeah. And McIlroy has his friend. I'm not sure whether, is that achieving what he needs, but
actually it depends, Martin. Sorry, Martin. It depends hugely on what you expect your caddy to do for you. Now, I've not at anything like a decent level, but I've won several match play competitions because that's the kind of golfer that I actually was. I love match play everything, love match play tennis, the whole lot. But the one thing I wanted my caddy to do, to give me the confidence, even if he knew there was no way on the planet I was going to get there with a 9-iron, the minute he told me I was wrong to pick a 9-iron out of the bag, it went pear-shaped. His job is to convince me that I'm right, and maybe say things like, you'll have to hit this very, very well, Jimmy, to get there. That kind of thing. And saying, take an 8 and hit it easy. That sort of thing is what I wanted from a caddy. And I think that's probably what McIlroy wanted his friend to give him. And his friend probably did, except he got some fuckwit coach who said to him, your caddy doesn't have a rangefinder and he's not helping you with the putts as much as he should. And again, somebody was nibbling away at McIlroy's mind. And bear in mind, Martin, his caddy got him to his 100 million a year contract. It's only when he started messing around with caddies and coaches and everything else that his game started falling apart. Same thing happened to Tiger Woods, but it was something non-golf related that he was messing around with that screwed up his game, screwed up lots of things for him. But
Tiger's wife had her own set of clubs that night. But Derwynne, to me, looking in, not knowing anything about golf myself, really, I think really it's a game that is not overcomplicated. You need a good rhythm in your swing off the tee to drive it relatively straight, and that's it. Deciding whether you want to take 2 or one more shot to the green To me, I don't know.
I played.
Golf in theory is a real simple game. In practice, it's an unbelievably complicated game.
Yeah, right.
And 9 times out of 10 is, you've heard all these different phrases, and the hardest part of the golf of your game of golf is 6 inches, and that's the 6 inches between your ears.
Yeah, fairway between your ears. Yeah.
If McIlroy gets a bit of confidence going, he'll start doing shots that you can't imagine. You've only got to look at Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth, not the great swinger of a golf club, amazing winner of money. On a run, on a conference trip, can do anything you want. As soon as he starts to not produce what he was producing, his confidence goes down this way, and he's out in the wilderness. I'm not even sure if he was in the top 200 at one time, Jordan Spieth, a season or so ago. And again, it's just that building up confidence. I mean, before we leave golf tournaments.
Yeah, before we leave golf, Derwynne, who have you your eye on for the British Open? Would Phil Mickelson be in the frame?
No, I don't think Mickelson can do it round Royal St George's. I could be wrong, but I know 9 times out of 10 you are wrong. But I think St George's is so. It's such a tough. It's probably one of the toughest. It's a toss up between that and Carnoustie as being the toughest Open venues. I think a lot of it depends on the draw. A lot of it depends on the weather. If you get wind down there, it's brutal. I mean, it's a brutal golf course. I wouldn't like to say who'd win that. You've probably got a dozen players right now who you could fancy. But again, something happens with Mickelson, he gets it going, he could win it. McIlroy gets it going a little bit, something clicks, and he's off and running. I think
Derwynne, would you think, Derwynne, the Irish golfers' fondness and experience on links courses would stand them better if St George's is tougher? In other words, if it's a course that they'd be used to playing that type of course in those conditions more than the Americans are. I would not walk away from someone like Lowry, who's just capable of digging his way around that course. And if McIlroy told Cowan to shag off and just went out and played, do you know who I think McIlroy should be talking to? And that's either Harrington or the Ryder Cup captain, Paul McGinley. Some guy who's just going to tell him, go out and play the game. Your swing is as good as it's ever going to be. Speaking of a swing, and I don't want to take over the program because I only came in for the last 5 minutes. My daughter has had a driver for 20 years, same old driver. Knocks the ball a mile, but she just didn't feel comfortable with it. And she went out to a guy, the Callaway rep, who measured her who gave her advice on her club. And she's playing in the golf club's junior girls competitions.
Yeah.
And he advised a change of club. Of course he did. He advised her to buy a €800 Callaway Big Bertha or whatever the hell. But he said to her, no, if you've got anything coming up in the next 3 or 4 weeks, do not buy this club until you get those competitions out of the way. And I think what he's saying is, if you're playing in something important, it's not the time to be messing around with your swing. And I think in simple terms, that's what's wrong with McIlroy. He gets a 340-yard drive, and he's not happy until he makes the 343 that the Shambo can hit. And that's his problem. He's constantly tinkering. He'd be far better off to say, right, I'm going to settle for this level. I'm going to putt this poorly. I'm going to drive this reasonably well. I'm going to play quality irons, and I'm going to keep doing that, because as Martin, I think, said there earlier, golf is an incredibly simple game. You only have to do one thing. It doesn't matter whether you slice the ball, draw the ball, hit it high, or scuttle it along the ground. You will be able to score in golf if you hit the ball the same way every single time. It's as simple as that. It really is. It's just as simple as that. It's when you start faffing around, trying to change your swing, get more distance, get shape, get stop on the ball, get height or whatever, things that are not part of your natural swing that you're getting the most part.
The final whistle is the programme, lads. We have a bit of housekeeping to do. Martin, come to you on this first. The hurling championship was on now. Derwynne left his notes at home, so he can't participate in this on the hurling. You know, he said he would. But Martin, did you get to see any of the hurling? I suppose the big winners over the weekend were Limerick, Kilkenny, Tipperary, and Dublin.
Yeah.
And obviously, Limerick against Cork was not a real hurling match, a real contest, was it?
Well, I think it was a competitive game. Like Limerick were, it was nip and tuck early on. The Limerick get a man sin bin for 10 minutes, and the resulting penalty, Nicky Quaid saves it. It was a turning point in the game. Limerick go down and score 2 goals, and all of a sudden, instead of being 4 or 5 points down, they go in at halftime 6 points up. And the second half, they just managed that lead. Cork got it down to 3 at one point. Limerick go back up and put it to 4, put it to 5, and next thing win by 8. So I think, considering, I think they had 20 wides during the game, it was actually, and for their first game back, their first real, the league was kind of like almost like a preseason. So this was their first game back, and it was good to see them, to beat Cork. And it's, like if you look at their record against Cork, like 2018, they beat them in extra time. 2019, they lost to Cork in the championship. So it was actually great to beat Cork in a championship match. It hasn't happened in quite a while, so that was good.
Yeah, and did you get to see it, James, the Cork Limerick match?
I did. I saw the highlights. I didn't get to see it live because, to be perfectly honest, of all of the games that were on, I honestly, sorry, Pat, no, you're a proud Cork man and all that. I just didn't see Cork putting up any challenge to Limerick. I think next year they will. If Kingston is allowed to stay there and bring the young players through, they will. When they were good, they were very, very good, but they just weren't able to sustain it. They're short Jimmy Barry Murphy leader on the field. They really are. They've got some good players, but there's nobody out there who's going to drag them through. And I think to be perfectly,
I have to criticise Cork. I don't see the point in bringing on a player in a serious match with 3 and 4 minutes to go. There's no point in it.
No, unless he's a 15-year-old that you want to just give him an atmosphere shot, but he's not going to accomplish anything. Not when you're 6 points behind, with seconds to go. I think that I think the biggest problem with the Limerick match was that no matter how good the Limerick game was and the Dublin game was, they were all overshadowed by a blot on the GAA decision in the Tipperary Clare game.
Shocking.
I think that was appalling. And his rationale for giving it, while it was absolutely flawed, what really angered me hugely was how he could say that was a goal scoring opportunity that was stopped by a foul, and how he didn't give a penalty and a sending off for the foul on Aaron Shanahan with 2 or 3 minutes to go. Brian O'Driscoll would have been proud of the tackle that the Tip fullback pulled off. How in God's name he didn't give it? He didn't even give a free for it, let alone a booking. Well, because he couldn't give a free. He couldn't give a free if he wasn't going to give a penalty. And I think
Yeah, because it was. Martin, did you see the tip?
I did,
Yeah, right.
yeah. And up until that sin bin or yellow card incident, it was an absolute cracking match. You know, it was really end to end. It was very competitive. I didn't expect Clare to play as well as they did. The first half they were sensational. You know, like even though Tony Kelly was being well marked during the game, like other guys stood up. The Galvins in particular played really well. You know, to put one of them in full forward there, and he scored a beautiful goal. They were playing really well, and you know that decision just totally changed the game. And what baffles me is that the referee didn't consult with anybody. You know, he doesn't consult with the linesman. He doesn't consult with his umpires. For both of those big decisions, you know, not to award a penalty to Clare towards the end, but to award the penalty to Tipperary. You know, when you look at the camera angle from behind the goals, like there was actually two Clare players and two Tipperary players, you know, inside the 21.
Yeah.
You know, in around the square. So
How
how it's a goal scoring opportunity, it just baffles me.
Did you see Did you see, Martin? Did you see the picture that's going around on social media where they showed 31 yards to the goal and 28 yards to the Ennis Road. He was closer to the Ennis Road outside the goal than he was to the goal. And I mean, I think what you said there, Martin, is very, very interesting, because I think I look at a tiny hockey pitch, and hockey is a fairly quick game. Field hockey played by men is a fairly quick game, and they accept it's a fairly quick game. And a pitch of 100 yards by 50 yards has two referees, one in each half.
Yeah.
How in God's name they expect a middle-aged guy who is not anywhere near as fit as the players to be able to officiate in a game like hurling for 70 minutes and cover the entire pitch? The GAA have to now make one single choice, and that is force every umpire to reach a certain level of refereeing quality if he's going to be an umpire, and the referee has to consult him and the linesman about any decision. And finally, a second referee. Now, the problem they have is there's only about 5 decent referees in the country, so how they're going to find 2 to put into every game is beyond me. But the simple answer is working in rugby. It's an unmitigated cock-up in soccer, but a VAR in hurling would not go astray at all. And I wouldn't even look for a VAR. I just look for an action replay on the sideline that the referee can go on. They have to do it. That was a disgrace. So, you know, Tipperary, Clare were robbed. End of story.
Yeah. That particular referee only sent off one player last year, and it was a Clare player.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not saying he's biased, but that decision left the Blythe on GA for the weekend, as you said, Martin and Derwynne have started. And really, that referee himself has been isolated by the Referees Association as well. You know, they came out and said that decision was completely and utterly wrong. Now, obviously, there's nothing in the rules that can have a going backwards on the decision. That cannot happen, because you'll have anarchy, you know, when you look at it, because it's such a tight frame as well for the championship matches to be run off. But the other good news story over the weekend, before we leave GA, was Dublin's win over Galway. Martin, did you see any of that? I thought it was fabulous.
Yeah, I was watching it on Saturday afternoon. Maybe I think, you know, maybe Galway took Dublin for granted a small bit, underestimated them maybe. You know, Galway were very strong in the league. They basically conquered all. So, you know, they'd beaten Limerick. So going into the championship, I suppose they're probably second favourites going in. And I just couldn't believe they were turned over, to be honest. I didn't expect it, but Dublin had a game plan and it worked, and they kind of stuck to it. So it's a huge setback for Galway.
Yeah, and I think that I think after this weekend, Jimmy and Derwynne, I know you agree with me. I think the three teams left standing to me will be Tipperary, Kilkenny, and Limerick. Those three teams, I think, will be one of the All Ireland winners. In my way of thinking, I don't know whether we'll come together or not. But before we leave the show, we go back to the soccer, James, because we said we would go back to the Euros before we finish. Now we have two semi-finals. We have one tomorrow night with Italy and Spain. You're all going to be put on. And we don't know whether it's coming home or not yet, Derwynne. Apologies for that. But tomorrow night, James, we have Italy and Spain first up. Now, what do you think of that? They had no Irish player, as far as I know, on the Italian team, is there?
No, no, there's not. No, we have Irish players all over the place. But I look at Spain, and I see how disorganized teams get torn asunder by an 8-man attack from Spain, because they don't have. I mean, I love Morata. I think he's a lovely man, lovely player, probably the worst striker that Spain has had for years. And Moreno, his second in command, is just as bad. They will not score against Italy. I can't see their tactics that worked against weaker teams on the way. I can't see it working against Italy. And Italy have sneaky assassins. They've got a couple of players who've been scoring excellent goals that we just plain haven't heard of. So I don't see Spain doing it against Italy. I just don't. I think it'll be tight, because the Italians are going to go back into the usual Italy mode, and they're going to be focusing on not allowing Spain score, which I don't think will be that much trouble to them these days, because the Spanish midfield is not as good as it used to be, and the forwards are not really that much, really, to be perfectly honest. So I think Italy will actually do it. And can I reach for my Guy Fawkes mask before I make a comment on the Wednesday match?
Tomorrow night first. Tomorrow night, Italy and Spain. There's no Irish players on the pitch now tomorrow night. Who do you think will win out in that one?
You asking me still? Oh,
Derwynne.
Italy.
Yeah, that one. Yes. Tomorrow night, Derwynne, of Italy and Spain. Do you think Spain has any chance?
I don't think they've got a chance, but it wouldn't shock me if they nicked it 1-0.
And Martin, tomorrow night, what do you think, Italy and Spain?
Again, it depends. We all know what Italy are capable of now at this stage. So it depends. I think it really depends on how Spain set up and how they approach the game. I think they'll probably approach it in a very defensive manner. I don't think they're like they will try their utmost to have a 0-0, maybe a 1-1, and try and beat them in penalties or something like that. I don't see them beating them in 90 minutes. I don't see them beating Italy in 90 minutes. I think if Italy score first, Italy will win.
And James, then we have the other semi-final. I forget now who's in that Wednesday night. Denmark and
some Scandinavian team and some shower who only seem to be their most powerful asset is the ability to bribe UEFA to giving them all their games at home. We'll see how they. I think that they. Shockingly, I think they could beat Denmark. Although there again, can the Denmark fans travel? If the Danes can get a crowd into Wembley, I wouldn't be at all surprised. But at this point in time, put it like this: I think Denmark, like Martin said, Denmark would be very happy to see it going to penalties, because England won't go to penalties. Yeah. Just as a small aside, because by this time next week it'll be all over. One thing I think Southgate is a lovely man. He really is, and there's some lovely players on that team. Pretty well all of them, with the exception, all the good players are Irish, with the exception of Raheem Sterling, who probably, if he looked far enough into his background, he'd find Irish blood in there somewhere. But I do feel seriously sorry for Southgate, because I could write the headlines for the Sun and the Star and the Mirror they're going to be all going on about. He had all his games at home. It couldn't have been easier for him. He was in the easiest half of the draw, and he still couldn't do it. The poor man is going to be ripped asunder if he doesn't win it. And it's not just getting past the game tomorrow night, or Wednesday night, rather. He's going to be vilified if he doesn't win this. And I do feel sorry for him.
I say, Derwynne, you probably would. I mean, not because of you, but you probably would fancy England to beat Denmark, do you think, in 90 minutes?
No, I think it's going to be a real tight game.
Mm.
I don't think Denmark's a pushover at all.
No.
And it wouldn't shock me if that went to penalties.
Yeah.
And
They played.
Martin, would you think the same?
Well, they played in the Nations League last year,
Yeah.
2020, and Denmark won 1-0. Harry Maguire was sent off, and Christian Eriksen scored a penalty. So,
Yeah.
they have played, and they played recently, and Denmark overturned them at home in Wembley. So
Yeah.
I don't think Denmark are by any means a pushover. This could be very close. And
This
again,
could
I think it was mentioned earlier, if England don't score first, so if Denmark score first, how will England react to being 1-0
That's
down?
the question, yeah, that's the question. So you could say the spirit of 92 could be invoked again for the, I don't know. I fancy England anyway to come out myself against Denmark in 90 minutes. I think they have too much firepower. That's if they play up to scratch. And I think Italy will have an easy win over Spain. I think it'll be Italy and England. And that would promise to be a cracking game because we're all out because you have to win. There's no back doors or anything. So I'd like to
that game. If that was the final, Pat, that would be very much like a Premier League game because both teams are going to go forward.
They are. To be a cracking final, to be good for soccer, not because to be good for soccer for England and Italy to be in it. I think they've been the two best teams so far, soccer teams in the Euros. And as I said, Denmark might be the only fly in the ointment, but I think if England play up to scratch, they should do it all right,
Just on 92, Pat, just quickly on 92, I was actually looking that up there. And in 92, when Denmark played the semi-final, they played the Netherlands, who would have been really hot favourites because remember, they won Euro 88.
They did.
And so they played the Netherlands in the semi-final and they drew 2-2 after extra time and they beat them on penalties. And it was Marco van Basten that missed. So it would be very interesting if that happens tomorrow, where Peter Schmeichel's son saves a penalty in a penalty shootout against England. It's Harry Kane, and it's Harry Kane that misses, so.
You're tempting faith. But before we leave it,
Right off you, Martin.
We definitely wish England all the best of luck with all their Irish players as well. We wish them the best of luck. And all their relations in Mayo will be shouting for them, and all over the place.
Can I interrupt there? I know that the England squad has 5 players. 4 of them actually played for Ireland, but 5 of them qualify for Ireland. And the one guy who hasn't played for Ireland has an Irish father, not just a granny rule thing. Okay, I can name 4 of them. Can either of the 2 guys tell me who the 5th is? The 4 are Harry Kane, Jack Grealish, Declan Rice, and Jude Bellingham. Who's the 5th?
It's Phillips with Leeds.
Calvin Phillips.
Yeah, I'm almost sure it is. Yeah, it's Calvin Phillips, I think. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, we could win the World Cup if they'd all defer to us.
Did your man make the squad at all? Bamford from Leeds. Did he make the squad?
No, he didn't. No. Thankfully, because hopefully that'll send a message to him that he's not going to get in the England squad, and he might declare for us, come back playing for us again. This is something I have to say it. Sorry, Derwynne, I have to say it. It truly annoys me to see 4 of those 5 players that we're talking about. In fact, 5 of the 6 players have played underage soccer for Ireland, and they all went to England when they suddenly thought they were going to be big name players and they were going to make the grade. I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Did you see the other the interesting meme that's actually going around, and it shows the England team without immigration. And of the 11 that started the other night, there's only 3 Englishmen who go back 3 generations of English people. Only 3 of them. Harry Maguire is one. I can't remember who the other 2 are. Look at it. It's all over Facebook. And so whenever any of the newspapers start going on about how, the Irish playing Scottish players and all poaching all the English players, we can finally shut them up and say, how good would you be if you hadn't brought in slaves, Irish slaves and slaves of a non-pale colour to actually build your country up and give you football stars. The only thing, Derwynne, that pisses me off about it is there's a town not very far from where I live, of which I think at this stage about 40% of the population are from Brazil. And they can't get a decent underage schoolboys soccer team going. And it really, really annoys me. We had great hopes for Gort FC to be playing in Champions League with 11 Brazilians played for them. Anyway, that's about 11. Sorry about that, guys.
Before we finish, Jim, with this one sport, but we'll be back here on next Monday night with another edition of the Final Whistle. So from Martin Waters, from Derwynne Honan, and from James O'Brien, lads, it's been a blast again. Thank you. And until we meet again, good night.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Night, Pat.